Chris Skinner ist Finanzmarktkritiker und Buchautor und er prognostiziert eine radikale Veränderung der Rolle und der Funktion des Bankings. Skinner ist Chairman des Financial Services Club und bekannt für seinen Blog The Financer. Er liefert uns jetzt Einsichten über die künftige Entwicklung im Kampf um das Banking und legt dar, welche Herausforderungen noch anstehen. Konkret sagt er uns, welche 5 Dinge wir wissen sollten, bevor wir mit einer digitalen Bank starten. I was telling the audience that you were complaining that we are a little bit late, right? It's okay. So, er vergibt uns und begrüßen Sie mit einem großen Applaus Chris Skinner.
Thank you, Mark. Hi. Bonjour, buongiorno, good day, guten Tag. Entschuldigen Sie, nein, sprechen Sie Deutsch, sprechen Sie English, bitte schön. Thank you. Otherwise, you would not get much of a presentation. Although I should say, Dankeschön to Herr Steinbock, because he had one of my slides, which is the key slide. It's my whole presentation in that slide. So, thank you. Goodbye. No, it's great to be in Switzerland. I've spent a bit of time here lately, so I'm liking it more and more the more I come. But I did spend a lot of time here in the past. I won't go on about too much because we're limited on time. I want you to have your lunch, and I've got a lot to say. I actually have a new book out, which I'm going to plug throughout the presentation, but it's 400 pages. And my slide presentation of the whole book is 500 slides. So I've picked out about 90 today, so you're going to get about 18% of what I could say in about 35 minutes. If you want to follow me on Twitter, those are my Twitter handles, FS Club and Chris Skinner. The FS Club is a club that's been around for 10 years now. We meet in many cities across Europe. We're probably going to open in Switzerland at the end of this year with a club here. It's a drinking club for bankers. Yay, we need that. So we meet in the evenings, we drink, and we talk about the future of banking, then we drink a lot more. And we do that in 8 cities, and we'll be doing that in 9 shortly. The blog that I write is thefinancer.com. I write every single day, and have done for 7 years, because I do it as my memory of what was going on before I have my drinking. So I can remember what I was talking about. And I often write about what people say to me, so I'll probably write a little bit about the conversations we have here. And this is the book that's actually only just come out. It's available only now on Kindle. It's coming out as a hardback in July. It did come out once before, because I self-published it in October 2013. And then Marshall Cavendish decided that they wanted to publish it as a hardback because they thought it was good and because they could see it was selling. And it's doing pretty well already just on Kindle. I looked this morning, it's number 2 in the charts on Amazon.com, so I'm pretty pleased about that. So here's some of the things I'm going to tell you that are in the book. You can find a lot of it on the blog as well. I've shortened it a little bit just to make it tight. So I'm going to talk about the things that I hear all the time, and I've heard them this morning. You know, digital, social, mobile, hybrid, all these things that we now are trying to get to grips with. And the fundamental thing we're trying to get to grips with is a world that has turned on its head, because we built a system, an industry, on the physical distribution of paper in a localized world, and we're now having to get to grips with dealing with the digital distribution of data in a networked world. And that is the radical fundamental difference. It's a chasm that we're trying to leap. And we try to evolve through that chasm, and it's the wrong thing to do because it doesn't work. You cannot take a physical distribution of paper in a local world into a digital distribution of data in a network world using the same foundations. You need to rebuild the foundations. And just to illustrate that, I'll talk through these first 4 things. Relationships. Relationships we believe are face-to-face. Customers don't trust you unless they meet the wealth manager at the desk or go into the branch and can eyeball the money. Wrong. Relationships are screen to screen. That's where we are now. We might meet the first time physically, and then we relate to each other after that digitally. Many of my friends I've never met. I just know them through Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram. It's a very different world, very different relationships that are screen to screen, not face to face. And when they're screen to screen, we're going to interact with that relationship far more frequently than we ever did before. Maybe 20 times a month with a bank, maybe 20 times a day. Compared to twice a year in a physical context, just because we have to pay in a check or something like that. That doesn't work. But having said that, customers want the option. Customers want that flexibility of having that eyeballing, because they like to see the money, they like to see the human, they like to see the whites of your eyes. So we have to keep that physical infrastructure. That will not go away. We will continue to have desk heads in wealth management and branches and people going to offices meeting each other. That will not go away. But now we're digitizing that human relationship, and we're keeping that relationship alive and interacting all the time. The real impact that has is that the customer interactions are far more frequent. This is from ABN AMRO, with the line that you see in green, light green, going up, showing that the mobile interactions have now overtaken the internet-based interactions. Customers are interacting with the bank all the time, compared to with the human, which is this little blocks here, that's the call centers. Compared to with the branch, who wants a branch? No one. They're all disappearing. We've seen thousands of branches closing in Europe just in the last 4 years. There's a study that came out on Reuters last year that shows something like 20% of Europe's branches have closed since this crisis hit, most of them in Spain, Germany, Italy. In the UK, we had 17,000 branches in 1990. We now have less than 7,000. That's not going to change. It's going to continue to rationalize, consolidate, and think about the branch infrastructure being a distribution on the digital infrastructure, rather than the digital infrastructure being distribution on the branch. That's the difference. So if 95% of your customer relationship is remote, or more than 95%, how do you make that work? How do you make it really rock and roll? That's the big challenge. So some relationships are face-to-face, but the real rock and roll, the secret sauce, is in the social space. So when I hear an awful lot of senior executives in banks say social media, well, it's marketing. We need a Twitter landing area for the marketing PR people to talk to people. We need a Facebook page to make us look good. Yeah, wrong. Because I'm in this place. I've moved my desk into a virtually networked, globalized world. I'm communicating with 7 billion people, potentially. Because 7 billion people have access to technology. Almost the whole planet now can text message using telephones. And a lot more of the planet can actually do more than just text message. They can do everything on the net, all of this. Let's take a couple of people who are quite well known. Her Majesty, the Queen, and the Pope. The Pope's more popular than the Queen. Got 4 million followers near enough. She's only got 1 million. He follows 8 people, she follows no one. Mind you, he's following himself. The Pope follows 8 Pope Twitter accounts that are in different languages. And the Queen, although she follows no one, she's not the Queen, she's just a joke. On the throne, on the gin, on the phone. This is made up by somebody. It's not Her Majesty. It's just a funny Twitter place that happens to have Elizabeth Windsor as its handle, Queen UK. But the thing here is that that's the world we're engaged in. We're all communicating virally, globally, all the time. That's why everything is instant, why you recognize all of this instantaneously, because these go globally in seconds. The Angry Birds Space app was downloaded 50 million times in 35 days. Everything is connected. All of us, humanity, are now connected, networked, communicating. And when we do that, we start behaving very differently. By way of example, I'm on Facebook, as maybe some of you may be, depending on what part of the world you're in. In fact, I have to congratulate Finance 2.0, because this is the most Twitterati audience I've ever been in front of. So I appreciate that. You're tweeting far more than most conferences I go to, because most conferences I go to are like this. That's why I have my tie, because I'm British in the city. I'm not taking mine off. So we're boring in most banks. We don't even know what Twitter is in many. But Facebook, yeah. This is a guy I know from Facebook. I haven't seen him for 7 years. He's not really a friend. He's just a guy I know. He happens to be a manager in IBM. He will unfriend me the minute he sees my presentation. Because although I haven't seen him for 7 years, I know that he's been divorced, remarried, got a new baby, as you can see. His mother died. He got a promotion. He moved house. That's not the sort of stuff you share with a stranger, is it? Or remote acquaintance, but you do now because it's social. That's what the social world is. You share all sorts of stuff. Like, I deal with a PR company. This is the manager of the PR company on holiday. One of the more respectable photographs from a holiday. Or the marketing head from one of the software companies I deal with. As I say marketing head, you can see it is marketing head. This is a lady in marketing in a company in Romania who I see once a year at Cybos. This is her at Cybos on Facebook in her company role. Christmas Eve. The work life has integrated. We don't have this separation of work and life. We just have life. You don't separate these things anymore. And unfortunately, in banking, we're very formal and serious, and we think our world is all about money and commerce and trade and profit and dealing with businesses and big money. But actually, our relevance has to be on this side today, because big money and business is not separated from social and caring and looking after each other in communities, online communities, global communities, electronically networked. What's our relevance to the community? I think we have this awful thing about demographics. We build for demographics. We don't build for demographics. We should build for communities. What's our relevance to this group that psychologically are linked globally through a mentality? I'm not a millennial, but I behave like one. In my head, anyway. And if we don't get that, we're just going to become completely irrelevant, because already all the models of socially connecting, this hybrid world, have appeared. They're all out there. And it's all about alternative ways of thinking about money. It's all about thinking about connecting people globally one-to-one through the network. That's why peer-to-peer lending has rapidly risen. In the UK, almost £1 billion worth of personal retail credit lending is through one-to-one P2P social lending platforms. And it's gone through the roof mainly because we got this perfect storm of the bank system failing just as the new disruptive electronic models of social finance appeared. So all the money in the banking system disappeared in Q4 2008 for some reason, you may be familiar with. And just as that was happening, all these new guys like Zopa, Smava, Prosper were appearing. And then they got into other places like businesses. So these guys run a business that makes bespoke bottles of gin. That's the reason why I know about them, because I like my gin and tonic. And what's interesting about this company is that they got into a squeeze. They needed a new gin still to create more gin. And they needed £25,000. And the banks aren't really in a position in the UK to lend much money, so they went to Funding Circle. And within 6 weeks, they got their new gin still. They got the £25,000 they needed from 248 people. Crowdfunding for business. Now, this hybrid model is already appearing because now we see people like Santander buying into social lending for business. Because this is not separated, it's integrated. Work, life, just life. And you've seen that from discussions this morning in trading, in wealth management, in commercial banking, in transaction banking. But the real point here is you've got to be social because that's where your customer is. You've got to be where the customer is. And when you think about the customer, great story about Molly Catchpole and Bank of America. Bank of America bringing a $5 a month fee for using your debit card, October the 1st, 2011. She, 22 years old, unemployed, a nanny, part-time, getting an education. No one knows her. But she says, I don't like this fee, and posts it on a social petition website called change.org that we now probably have heard of, but this time it was new. By October the 17th, Brian Moynihan, the CEO of Bank of America, went on TV in the press saying, "We were wrong, sorry, mistake." Public humiliation for Bank of America got voted the biggest PR gaffe of 2011 thanks to her. Because she got 357,000 signatures in 17 days for her petition to say it's wrong, you shouldn't charge us for using our money. Mainly because it got picked up by mainstream media, because social media ripples over into mainstream media. And I can give you many other stories that are similar to that one. I love this one just because it makes me laugh. If you didn't see it, JP Morgan don't understand social media. So if you don't understand social media, don't go there until you do. JP Morgan decided they wanted to reach out to graduates and kids and say, do you ever want to know what's going on in the world of banking? Ask for some career advice from one of our key executives on Twitter, live on November the 14th. Just ask JPM. Ask JPM. What's the best way to get blood stains out of a clown suit? Just ask JPM. Did you always want to be part of a vast, corrupt criminal enterprise, or did you break bad? I kind of think they messed up a little bit, and the social marketing department probably got made redundant because, Vic's cancelled. It's a bad idea. Not doing that. Social's where your customer's at. If you want to hear what the customer's thinking, just track it. It's raw. It's live. You can track it. This is as the LIBOR scandal broke in Barclays in the UK. And, these feelings of contempt, disgust, it's not the sort of things you want to associate with your brand, really, is it? You've got raw customer feedback. And because you've got that, if you treat it right, then you can turn it around into something amazing and pure and beautiful. That's what ICICI Bank have done in India. They launched Facebook banking in April 2012. And at that time, they had really negative views about the bank. Overwhelmingly negative views at the start that now are overwhelmingly positive because they are 24/7 responding to customers in Facebook, socially. Every thought, sharing, thought, need is responded to by their team, as well as doing full-service Facebook banking within an app. April 2013, the total positive view here is 46%, negative is 6%. Massive turnaround. Engaging the customer where the customer is, rather than being remote and just thinking it's just hype. It's not hype. It's fundamental. And then we get to the mobile space, and that's really hot, isn't it? We all like the mobile stuff because it's really sexy. It's like amazing. We check our phones non-stop. Many of you are using it now to maybe send messages to say, I wish the next presenter had turned up, or something. Lunchtime, not too far away. It amazes me how people think they can use phones at all sorts of moments that are quite inappropriate. I just don't think it's right to use your phone all the time. But some people think it's quite okay to have it, use your phone during sex. I don't know. I saw a slide from our previous presenter, Frank, which showed the difference in partying. This is the difference in the Pope's enunciation of Pope Benedict. There was one. Pope Francis, there's many. Because we're all smart now, and smartphones can do anything. Smartphones can do anything in banking and financial services, in wealth management, in investments. It can even make a cup of coffee. If you don't think a phone can make a cup of coffee, I've got an app on my phone that when I go into Canary Wharf, will make a cappuccino at the cappuccino machine because I order it on the ground floor so that when I get to the 39th floor, it's at the machine ready. You can do anything. And that's also intuitive. You don't need a manual to use a smartphone. That's why it's smart. So it takes off out there within seconds. 13 years to get 2 million people using internet banking, 2 months to get them using mobile. It's intuitive, it's viral, it's global, it's networked, it's human. When I look at the amount that banks are spending on this space, it's quite incredible. Bank of America in particular really get this stuff. I've got loads of case studies on what they did for the last 20 years in technology, but $500 million on mobile because they are leading this space rather than bleeding and following. And more fundamentally, mobile changes the world because it's not just a point of purchase, it's a point of sale. It's turned everyone into a merchant, as you can see from SumUp outside. SumUp, in fact, maybe got their idea from someone else, but having said that, they're doing a nice job, as is iZettle and many others out there. Just putting a dongle in a phone, take a payment. And once again, the disruption is being created not just by the disruptors, but by the banking system that's investing in the disruptors. Because the banks know that they are going to be eaten alive, so they have to fund the disruption. Sberbank has put 100 million euros into a venture capital fund for new startups in fintech, because they want to be part of that space. That's the key. And just as we think that that's the key, it's wrong, because mobile's completely boring. I've gone past that one. We're wearing it. I don't need a mobile device. I just want to have a cool gadget. You know, a cyborg glove, a Velcro strap for my wrist, a wearable contactless payment suit, which if you think is a joke, there is one out there. You can buy a suit with the payment system built into the sleeve. Whatever. Everything's connected. I just bought a new TV. I don't need a provider of films and entertainment. I just get it on demand. It's on the net. Everything is on the net. Everything is on the net. And now what we need to therefore think about is, how do we augment the service to our customer? How do we be relevant to the customer at their point of existence, their point of life? What that really means is that this lady's walking down the street. She's a quarter of a mile from Bloomingdale's. Just thinking, what's that? About 300 meters from Bloomingdale's. You get it right in Europe. This is American. She sees a trench coat. It's $279. Can I afford it? What does it look like on me? Is it worth it? Do I like it? Do I want to go into Bloomingdale's and actually try it on? Or should I just and get it delivered to home tomorrow morning by an Amazon drone or something? Yeah, that's the world we're living in. Everything's got to be relevant at our point of existence, not before or after. Bank of America have invested in a thing called Cardlytics, where as their customers go online, they get their statements and they get coupons for the places they shop the most. It's driven by a thing called Cardlytics. So you can get $20 coupon for Target off a USB terabyte drive the next time you go into Target store, because you go there quite often. But that's not that dynamic, because I'll forget about that. So I'm walking down the street, and on my phone, you're 100 meters from Target. Do you remember we offered you $20 off a USB terabyte drive? Just walk in now, $20. That's the relevance, knowing where I am, what I need, and that the customer's given me permission to make that contact, because the customer has to have given us permission. And the most fundamental thing here is that we invented money because the exchange of value had broken down. When we started farming and we became civilized and we had an agricultural revolution, we had an abundance of wheat and maize and goods, and farmers started to kill each other, because if you didn't have enough, you couldn't barter. So the priests invented money, so they could buy stuff off the farmers as an exchange of value and keep everyone civilized. 5,000 years ago, money was invented because barter broke down. That was the first revolution, the agricultural. Then, 300 years ago, we got the Industrial Revolution. And money was in the form of gold and silver. It's very heavy to carry around, so we changed it into paper, notes and checks, because it's much easier to do continental and global trade using paper. But it had to be trusted, so we had central banks created, so we could trust that paper. Then we created plastic, because people moved out of factories and into offices. And when you moved into offices, you'd end up entertaining a customer, and it takes a long time to write a check, so just use a card. Diners Club invented as a cardboard payment system, then plastic more recently. And now we can put a chip inside everything, because everything is the Internet of Things, connected, communicating. We don't need the plastic, the paper, the cash. But we'll keep the cash, because cash is the only exchange of value that's anonymous, trusted, immediate, and not audited and tracked by technology. So cash will be around for a long time. But the paper stuff, the plastic stuff, get rid of it. That's why you never see anyone pay for anything in Star Trek. You never see Captain Kirk paying for something, get his wallet out. Never. So it's connectivity that's the really hot space. It's not the mobile devices. It's chips communicating between walls, floors, shoes, handbags, ceilings, everything. That's where the hot space is. The Internet of Things. How do you become relevant to the community you're trying to reach at their point of existence and point of context? And so the final thing that comes into this is that we grew up in a world where money made the world go around. And what we now know is that that's also wrong, because it's actually pornography, games, and gambling that makes the world go around. It's nothing to do with money. We don't think about getting up saying, I want to go and pay to have a game. We just go and want to play. We want the game. My favorite app is Uber. which is the taxi app, which is going global. Mainly because when I'm trying to get from my hotel to the Aura conference suite, I'm not thinking about, I need to get from hotel to Aura conference suite, so I really want a taxi and I really want to pay for it. You know, I'm thinking I just need to get here. So it's the destination that's key for me. So Uber has realized that the friction is getting the taxi and paying for it. So it's taken away that headache, because you preload your card and the taxis geolocate you, as well as geolocate the free taxi that says, yeah, I'll pick Chris up. Away you go. So there's no friction anymore. It's wonderful. It takes away the pain of life. Finding things, paying for things. You just get them, consume, enjoy. You know, Cityville grew to 100 million users in 43 days. That's phenomenal in itself. You know, but of those 100 million people, about 5% didn't have enough friends to build cities. So they started buying virtual cities with virtual currency backed by real money. So money's become data, because it's the getting the game and enjoying it that's the key here. The virtual currency, the payment, all that stuff becomes just data. And you don't care about that piece except that it comes out of an account somewhere at some point. And just to show that games, gambling, and pornography drive the world, in 2002, when the virtual currency QQ was created in China, mainly because kids in China couldn't download games and ringtones, this was a virtual currency just created so that kids could go into a newsagent, give them 100 yuan, and get a username and password with 100 coins. And that's basically what QQ is. A virtual currency created for the internet. And in 2005, it was a $500 million economy, and it started to grow very rapidly because no one had cards, no one could pay for things. And as soon as they realized this currency is really working, pornographic websites and chat rooms and gambling websites appeared in China. They were banned. And the government said, we don't like this, you shouldn't have this. You must shut this down. This currency is not good. Well, what happened is in 2006, the currency had tripled to $1.5 billion as a result of the government's action. Now the government regulates this currency with Tencent, the internet provider, to make sure it works effectively. But the core of what we're talking about is that money is just data. Data is driving our life. An exchange and managing as an exchange of value, the way in which we think about the world. Money is just data. That's why people want to rob your websites and your systems, not your branches. Because if you rob a branch, you might get 50,000 euros. You rob a system, you get 500 million. Much better. The average bank gets 1.3 million cyber attacks a year, of which 82 are mission critical. They bring down the bank. How do you work out what the 82 are? Just use real-time tracking. Just know all the touches on your system in real time, across the globe, across all your systems. Again, it's the reason why you have to digitally disrupt. You've got to recreate your own systems to be able to deal with that threat. Otherwise, you use old stuff, it's just going to creak and break down. That's the reason why Bitcoin's been created. You know, I love Bitcoin, because we have a virtual currency created as a global exchange with no bank system in between, no charges in between. That's why the WikiLeaks generation loved the Wikicoin. We've created an exchange that's completely new and different and disruptive. And then we go, you know what, Chris? It's just collapsed because the MT-GOX went down, all the money disappeared. You know, no. What happened is a virtual currency is being created that then was being virtually traded on virtual exchanges that were commercial. So one of the virtual exchanges disappeared because they were stupid, along with a few others. But the actual Bitcoin idea is still as fundamentally right as it was before and after Bitcoin. That's MT-GOX mean. It's not the problem, because so many people are trying to create a Bitcoin ecosystem. Richard Branson will accept payment for going on Virgin Galactica, the space flight, in Bitcoins. He's just invested $30 million in a Bitcoin company. Do you think he's stupid? He's doing that because he knows that this is an infrastructure that's growing. I'm getting more and more websites where I can pay in Bitcoin or PayPal or Visa, MasterCard. In case you wonder what that is, it's my phone to say, you're going to have to shut up in a minute, Chris. I always do that just to give me a reminder about my last 5 minutes. So this is my last 5 minutes. Data makes the world go round. That's what Bitcoin's all about. It's a wonderful idea. Money without government is going to be regulated. It will have government. Bitcoin will be regulated. So banks should be banking Bitcoins, and some banks do. So what does this really mean for banks? Well, for me, banks have to start looking for the value in the data. If everything is about data making the world go round, banks have to make data that's valuable banked. And what's valuable is some of this big data that's out there, 2.5 exabytes a day, what the hell is that? I'm British, I've already mentioned the Queen, so I have to mention William Shakespeare. And William Shakespeare wrote 37 plays, 154 works in his life in total. That's about 5 megabytes. So actually, in a big data context, we are creating 500 billion works of Shakespeare every day, if you want to know how much big data is. Of course, most of that is complete rubbish, because it's not really that important. It's Snapchat. It's sharing something for a few seconds with a friend that's then deleted. So that's not worthwhile. It's not worth keeping. Worthwhile is stuff like text messages. I'm on my way home. I might be late. That's worthwhile. But you don't need to keep it forever. It's just of interest at that moment. It's transient. Something that's really important but also transient is breaking news. So the Associated Press is one of the key breaking news Twitter areas on the web, AP. And this news came out end of last year, 2 explosions in the White House, Barack Obama's injured. The S&P 500, the Dow Jones, went down rapidly. Billions of dollars wiped off stock prices because this was horrendous news, but it was completely made up. In 10 minutes, the value lost on exchanges was around $5 billion, but this was just a hack into their Twitter account, and the Associated Press then announced, we haven't broken this news, it's not real, but it had a big impact. So it's really important, but it's not important long term, it's important in real time. Securing my data is important to me, like contracts, like things that I have, my usernames and passwords even, my access to my value, which is in a value that could be money in my bank account, or World of Warcraft gold in my World of Warcraft account, or Bitcoins in my Bitcoin account. Or what happens when you disappear from this earth? How many of you share your username and passwords of all your investments with your partner? Yay! What is your username and password? I want a death book. I want someone I trust to give all my usernames, passwords, and investment portfolio to. I would give them to my lawyer or my accountant, but I don't trust them. Maybe I should. I need someone I can trust to leave this with. So that on the moment that I disappear, it's all released into my executive will. If you don't do that, then someone's going to do it. That's why we worry about these guys, because they really get that stuff. Do I trust them with it? I'm not sure. So in conclusion, and these are the core lessons, I guess, is what should banks be doing right now? And I'm not going to spend a long time on this because it's short time left. But my cheesy line for the day is digital is a journey, not a destination. I have to have an Americanism in there somewhere. What I mean by that is too many people I talk to are getting digital bank teams built, giving them big budgets, hundreds of millions of euros, and saying, go build the app, the PFM, make us relevant to the millennials, and do whatever you have to do to be disruptive. And as a result, they get this wonderful thing built that can last for years and looks great, but it's completely irrelevant the moment it's built, because it's just built, and then it rots and disappears, or ends up being around for millions of years, hopefully. I'd rather say it's a journey. We're continually stretching ourselves. We build to get to the moon, and then we say, hey, that was fun, but you know what? We've got to move on. Let's go to Mars. Let's go to Saturn. Let's go to Jupiter. Let's keep building, using the new technologies to get bigger and better and faster and more relevant. I actually worked for the technology company that built the Apollo series of moonshots. And when Apollo 11 landed on the moon, it had about the technology today that was in your phone 10 years ago. The phone you have today has far more technology than the Apollo moonshot. Think about it. That's how to be relevant. And as we get into that digital relationship, we've got to be really relevant, so we've got to be human. Humanize the relationship in the remote contact. What I mean by that is you've got people, process, technology, you've got channels, products, customers. How do you make yourself really good and relevant to those customers? Well, by being right in the front-end space, being social, mobile, and using data to be analytical and relevant to those customers, but at the back end, getting into using clouds, APIs, and apps to make sure that you've really got that stuff sorted. In fact, it should be the other way around. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And make it real time. I know most of you know cloud because it's all around us in this room, but mainframe through the internet, it's controlled and secure. APIs, plug and play software, you can plug and play anywhere. Wonderful stuff. Again, I think you're reasonably technical, so you probably know that stuff. So the slide that Mr. Steinbach used was this one. And I'm not going to spend too long dwelling, because again, I don't have a great deal of time. But what I'm really saying here is that the back end for the product is now firmly in the cloud, accessible anywhere, securely, globally. The delivery of that will be in a plug-and-play form, delivered through an API that anybody can pick up and play with and integrate into what they want to do with that product. That's how the process is then delivered into the front-end app, which is what the customer sees, and the app is what the customer wants to play with. And it's all real time. Now, banks really need to cannibalize themselves to make themselves leverage that space. So cannibalizing the bank means a little bit like the analogy of the car industry. The car industry used to make everything. Mercedes, BMW used to manufacture all the components of the car. They used to have them all then put into a production line where they would be built, and then they would deliver them into the end dealership where they would be serviced and managed. Everything was done end-to-end, vertically integrated by the car manufacturer. If they'd stayed that way, Mercedes and BMW would be bankrupt, because now they just source everything globally. They use common components. They don't make any components as such. They just assemble them, because all the components are common and sourced globally, cheaply, by specialists who do it much better. Then they deliver the car, and the car is serviced, and it's looked after, and the wheels and the exhaust and everything is dealt with by specialists who do that stuff much better, replacing glass, doing tires, because they specialize in that. Whereas in banking, we've got this really complex world that we think we own. We manage all of this stuff. We do it all ourselves. Yet as soon as we get into this world, we need to think differently. Because if you think about getting stuff through the cloud, for example, to me that's something like SmartyPig. SmartyPig is a back-end service that does social saving. So I've got a social saving goal of getting a MacBook Pro. It's $3,000. And my friends and family can contribute to me getting to that goal on Facebook, on Twitter, or whatever social media I use. And they offer that as their own service, or they offer it as a white label that can be plugged in anywhere else. So the product, savings, is now iWish in ICICI Bank. They've just used the cloud-based service to offer a new product to their customers in Facebook through social saving. And from an API context, this is PayPal. PayPal produced their first API in 2011. They got a bit of a hike in revenues and volumes, and their costs started to go down. They made that API much easier to use in Q2 2013, and if you look before the line and after the line, revenues and costs are going down rapidly. So costs are going down rapidly, revenues going up rapidly. That's what the API does, because everyone builds and uses it. If we look at the app, the front end, I love Fidor Bank. I love the way they think. Fidor Bank in Germany is a proper bank. But if you like them on Facebook, you get lower interest rates. They're at 19,500 likes. When it gets to 20,000, my loan rate goes down by 0.1%. I pay less for my loans from Fidor Bank. Why would you do that? Well, because it's actually very easy. Every person who likes Fidor Bank on Facebook brings 235 friends with them. So for every 2,000 likes, you've got 500,000 free adverts that are friends advertising that they like you to their friends. So it makes them very relevant. That's the reason why Fidor Bank's customer registration cost is 1.3 euros per customer. You compare that with American banks that pay $1,500 per customer to acquire them, you can start to see the reason why being social where the customer is, being relevant, is far better than doing some advertising and being big. So this is the old way of thinking. And the new way of thinking says, you know what, I can specialize in doing these things across the whole spectrum of financial services. I don't need to be there doing everything. I just need to do my one bit really well. My product, process, people piece. My cloud, my app, my APIs piece. That's what I need to focus on. That's what I need to do really well. And then I can throw it out there and other people can integrate it and deal with it. So what actually banks will need to do is become great integrators, assemblers of all the components, just like BMW, Mercedes. Bring all those pieces together and assemble them into the best that it can be for the customer. Assemble the components, don't build them. You're too slow. And specialists will do it far better. And finally, don't be complacent. This is my last slide, by the way, near enough. Whew, they say. Lunchtime. Oh, yeah. Don't be complacent. The reason I say this is that at this point, some people may be sitting there thinking, oh, Chris has gone on and on and on. He's a complete digital maniac, and it's completely irrelevant. I've got a bank, and I'm very good here. I've got a nice big office. I don't need to listen to you. Well, if you're thinking that, okay, my last point will leave you hopefully changing your mind, not about me, but about this, which is 10,000 millennial customers in America were interviewed by a research company just recently. This research I got hold of in February. And millennials are people who were born between 1980 and 2000 who grew up with the internet age. And we may say, oh, young people, not bothered about them. But actually, no, they're like 35 now. They're kind of the mainstream employees, the new management team that you've got around you. And they're also your customers, the new customers that you really want to get hold of and keep. So they were interviewed. And what was interesting is that they, as a group, believe that banking is actually, and financial services, going to go through a seismic change disruption. 70% believe in 5 years the way we pay for things will be completely different. And they don't want that to come from a bank. They expect it all to come from outside the industry. 73% think it's going to come from Google, Amazon, PayPal, someone like that, Apple, because they have the capability. Key is that 71% would rather go to the dentist than to the bank. Because they don't like banks. The big 4 US banks are amongst the top 10 most hated brands in America. Of all the brands that customers hate the most, the 4 big banks are in the top 10. Woo, we won something. So don't be complacent, because your customers don't like you in some markets. And to make them like you, you've got to be loved in the space where they're at, which is the social space. That's why I said all that stuff. That's why I said all that stuff. And hopefully you got some ideas out of what I said. And if you didn't, go and read the book. Thank you.